Hi, in this video tutorial I'm going to show you how you can use this biped rig that I've set up to create animations for Star Wars Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy. Now this rig won't let you be able to animate like instantly. You'll still have to learn the basics of Softimage Mod Tool to be able to really fully use this. I'm going to start off by just showing some of the basic controls that this rig has that can really make the whole animation process a lot easier and a lot more lifelike. Rather than animating each bone one by one, I've set up a lot of constraints that can animate multiple bones at one time and move them all in a lifelike way. You can see here I start off by having this master control, which is pretty simple. It just grabs everything and lets you move it in world space. And then below that I've got the torso, which lets you grab the hips and everything above it and move it around. I've got the hips here, represented by this cube. I've got some foot IK controllers, and if you pick those up, you can see it'll let you move the feet around. There are up vectors for the knees. The knee will point in the direction in which, well, actually the opposite direction in which this moves. I didn't want to have the up vectors in front of the knee because as the knee bends they can conflict with one another and cause awkward movements. I've got a foot roll setup going on here. As you can see, rotating this pyramid, let the character stand up on its toe or fall back on its heels. I've also got, you can let it stand up on its toes only, as well as pointing the heel, pointing the toe, and just the toe tap itself. Just move the toe by itself. So there's a lot going on down there for the feet, which really help with walk and run cycles a lot. It'll make things a lot faster and a lot easier. Now moving on, you'll see I just got, these aren't actually spine controls right here. These aren't parts of the spine. They actually do is control chest and hip depth, as you can tell by their name. They just kind of are ways to move the spine. The actual spine object is hidden because it's best not to keyframe that. Just leave it as is. As you can see, I can take this and we've got a twisting spine. Very lifelike spine setup going on. Bends and twists pretty realistically. Up here we've got, let me just hide that again. We've got shoulder shrug. Control the way the shoulders move. Just like for the feet, we've got a wrist controller as well as up vectors. And rotating this wrist control is what will control the hand rotation. And then we've got little guys here for the finger joints. Moving them around will change which way the fingers bend. It's best to move them in local space rather than global to keep them rotating in the correct direction. They should always rotate the way they should. As you can see, these three are constrained here because the Jedi Academy uses the ring finger bones to control the middle ring and pinky fingers. And then other than that, we've got pretty simple head and neck that you can rotate around, as well as some facial controllers like for the jaw, lips, eyes and the brow. Moving these will, as you can see there are little arrows, it's which way the eye will look. This will just control the brow from the center. Since there is no individual bone to control each brow. And other than that, we have these roll divisions here, which you probably won't use very often. They're mainly just here to help with twisting. Like say just depending on the way you move the arms or legs, and you might have some, you know, odd twisting going on at the joint. You can just rotate these on their x-axis here to just like get a little bit smoother of deformation of the character. Other than that, they just follow the arm. They don't really, kind of moved it weird there. They just follow the arm around. Now this guy here, this is the motion bone. This bone is what controls character movement in the game. If you play some of the aerial moves in mod view, you can see this bone moving around quite a bit. Best with this bone is to keep it at its global coordinates that it uses for the root pose, which it's actually not even at right now. Its global coordinates should be more like there. That's its exact global coordinate for the root pose. But since it's constrained to these here, it'll follow those around. Other than that, I've also set up the root pose, which you'll need before merging your animation using the GLA merge program. And if you click on the biped here and open up the animation mixer, you'll see that there is an animation track with the root pose. And you can see that I've actually put it before frame 0. Since Softimage normally starts out on frame 0, I mean, you can start wherever you want. Just make sure you move that clip so that it's the first frame. And that way, before you export your animation, all you have to do is just change the beginning frame, and there you'll have your root pose. I've also set up neutral poses on all of the rig controllers. So in case you need to go back to that standard pose that I've set, since it's much easier to start an animation from rather than this root pose, you can just get out of the frame that the root pose uses, you know, -2 and -1, and just reset all transforms. Normally resetting transforms will reset everything to 0, 0, 0 in world space, but with a neutral pose, it sets all the local, it zeroes out to all the local transforms. So as you can see, its global space is there, but locally it's zeroed out. That way, if you ever have any sort of problems, you know, you move things around and you want to reset the pose, it can very easily be done, you know, with Control-Shift-R, reset transforms. Now, I've also set up some controllers here for the hands. I've got a staff and a regular single saber for left and right hands, and these will actually what you'll be animating to control like saber movement. If say you wanted to animate a saber style, you would just click on this mesh here and animate it in the timeline, and that will actually move the bone associated with saber control and all other things bolted to the right hand like any other weapon. Now if you wanted to, you can add guns, but I didn't at this point just because only so many things can be constrained to one object, and I didn't want to have a big cycle in dependencies. So right now it just has sabers set up. If anyone wants to set up a gun, I can show you how. It's really simple to do. Other than that, we've got, these are actually all the bones used to control everything. I just keep them hidden, and this skeleton isn't even what gets exported. You're really just animating the controllers only. There's no reason to ever mess with those bones. These controllers are all you'll need to keyframe to get your animation going. And then you can see here I've got a group for the Jedi Academy skeleton. Now this skeleton is just a simple null setup of each bone contained. If you opened up, Kyle in mod view, you'd see all the bones that are contained in this group. And these are constrained to the rig bones. So whichever way the rig bones move, this skeleton will follow. Just like the rig bones follow the rig controllers. And then of course I have just a dummy mesh set up. And all that really is a bunch of small cubes that are the same size as the null bones in the Jedi Academy skeleton. And they're just there because the bones need something enveloped to them for the compiler to work properly. Otherwise it gives you errors and it will not compile your model. Well, your animation actually. Now moving on, I'm going to open up a scene where I've already created an animation. There we go. Now you can see here I've made a run animation to replace the existing run with staff because I didn't really like the one that was already in the game originally. I think this one's a little bit cooler, a little bit more aggressive, something more you'd probably see someone running with a staff would actually be like. You can see I've got it, it's actually 14 frames, but I just chopped off the final frame because the final frame I created it as a it was really a starting point for the animation, since it's actually pretty much identical to the first frame. And since I don't want to have awkward animation, I'm not going to include 2 frames that are the same. Now to even just export this, as you can see I kept my motion bone in the global coordinates that it needs to be. Otherwise your character may be off the ground or below the ground. If you have any of those problems, just try moving the motion bone and keying it at the first and last frame in the local Y or global Y space that they need to be to have the character, on the ground properly. Now just to export this, all I'm going to do is change this to -1. As you can see there, I've got that's where the root pose is. And then the whole animation goes. I'm just going to go here and change this to objects only with mixers. I'm just going to middle click on model root. Now that's the actual Jedi Academy skeleton made of nulls. There's no animation on it right now. Nothing is animated. Only these controllers have been animated, but I'm going to show you how it's going to transfer that animation over as you export. I'm going to export .xsi. These are the settings you're going to use: ASC2, 3.0, Polygon type triangles must be triangles, animation all. For your F-curve, you're going to use a standard F-curve with linear interpolation because that is what the game accepts. You're going to check this plot box here. And the plotting an animation is how it transfers the motion from all those controllers and rig bones down to the Jedi Academy skeleton, since they're constrained to those bones and they follow it. We're using it the rig is actually considered a shadow rig, since there's no rig actually built around the Jedi Academy skeleton itself. The unchecked constraints, weighted, convert to FK with nulls. And you don't need textures, but I have it checked anyways. Now I made a folder. I have my folder set up the same as a PK3 file, which most of you probably are already familiar with. And if not, this is how you're going to want to set everything up to be able to compile models properly on your hard drive. Have a base folder and just have the same structures you would in, like, say, the assets. And I've just put it to a folder, both run staff, since that's the animation I'm going to be replacing. And I'm going to export it as root.xsi. I've already exported, so I'm just going to overwrite. You always want to name it root. And just give it a minute to export. There we go. End. Now minimize that. We're going to open up Assimilate. What we're going to do is go on, well, first of all, in case you don't have your preferences set up, these are going to be your preferences right here. The Carcass compiler that comes with the Jedi Academy SDK, you're going to put it in C base, and you're going to want to point to it, you know, using this browser here. And everything else is going to be just like that. Now we're going to go add files, not open. And we're going to go to our root file that we just exported. Say yes. And double click on this. Now you're going to get this dialog box here. We're going to make its own skeleton, of course. Keep the motion bone. And see this kind of example they have here? Just do that. Otherwise it'll go double over C base, and then it'll have C base again, and you'll get all kinds of errors. So just have it like that. Our scale, since the Softimage scale, or even 3ds Max scale, doesn't quite match up when doing animations, I'm going to do 0.64, and for your offset for the Z, you're going to change that to 24. Now we have this PCJ list here. In this list, if you've ever noticed in Mod View, the skeleton hierarchy does not match the hierarchy of the skeleton of anything used right now. The skeletons people are using to export models or anything, it's all rearranged by the game. Model files only use the envelope data. They don't even use the bones that are exported. It references the humanoid GLA to use that. But since we're making an animation, we're going to have to rearrange the hierarchy ourselves. Now what we're going to do, we're going to start out here with flatten and just start adding these bones. It doesn't even have to be in this order. These are just the ones that need to be added so that it'll rearrange the hierarchy correctly. And there we go. If you need to, you can pause the video, maybe jot these down. I've actually got a post-it stuck to the side of my computer with all these settings. I'm going to just hit OK. Now we're going to go over here and hit build. And you can see I've already saved this once. Just save your, the name isn't even a huge deal, but I've just saved it as both run staff, since that's the animation I'm going to be replacing. And if everything went okay, you might get, you know, texture chords are blank because of the dummy mesh that gets exported. But press any key. There we go. And now if we go into our folder where we've compiled our animation, we should have GLM, a GLA, frames, info. As you can see, you've even generated a GLM because I've set up the dummy mesh. You can see there, that's actually a 3D model. Those aren't the bones, but even though they look like the bones, I did that kind of on purpose to just make things to where you could see. As you can see, it moves, but we've got the root animation at the beginning, so it looks funny right now. But you can open it like this to kind of be certain things are working properly so far. What we're going to do, we're going to take just that GLA, we're going to copy it, and over here, I've got my folder set up pretty similar to like if you have installed the SDK, which it's added a tools folder under game data, and under that folder I've got GLA merge, because in this tools folder is like where I like to keep all my special things here that help me with modding. There's quite a bit of things in here. And under here I've got GLA merge. As you can see, there's a README that'll pretty much tell you how to set it up, but otherwise it's really simple. You've got your exe file and you just run it using this batch file here. And that's the only thing you need set up. It'll already come with an example, I believe. And see, I just have my both run staff humanoid. Now that's an unmodified humanoid GLA. You don't want to have a modified one in there. I mean, you can, but that's a little more for someone who's a little more advanced, and it's going to be merging multiple animations. And you can see the setting there, which you can read more about in the README. I'm just going to close that out. Got my both run staff. I'm going to paste it in here. This is the newer one that I've just created. And I'm going to run this batch file. Now enter the output file name. You do not want to name it humanoid GLA, because weird things will happen. Because you're trying to overwrite something that you're using to merge. It's like a weird cycle. So just name it whatever. I like to name my stuff all kinds of weird, funny stuff. So there we go. You can see it processes all the frames. And since I used my PCJ list in Assimilate to match the hierarchy of the humanoid GLA, I've now got this new GLA file that's slightly bigger. I'm going to drag it over to my desktop, and now I'm going to rename it to humanoid. If I can spell right. There we go. Let's just minimize that. Now we're going to bring up our folder structure here. And I'm going to drop this. As you can see, I've already got my humanoid folder. That's there for mod view purposes, so mod view models load correctly. And now I'm going to open up mod view. With the standard base model there, I've got Kyle. Well, first off, actually, one thing I should explain here is the animation file, the configuration file. Since I've replaced an animation, what happens when you merge is your file gets merged as it's like and it'll be at the very end. And you can see the final animation here is the root pose. 21,374, and since it's two frames, 21,374 and 75 are the root pose. So your animation will start at 21,376. If you go up here, you can see where there we go. Both run staff. So let me change that to 21,376. And since I've made my frame count the same as the existing animation, because I wanted it to kind of not really seem too odd and stand out, like play faster or slower than the existing animation. So I've kept the frame speed and the frame count the same. You really don't have to. You can make it however long you want. Like if you're making an animation a little more complex, like say a saber draw animation, you know, you can do whatever you want. It's not a big deal. So 21,376, that's right. And now I'm going to save this. Close it out. Let's open up mod view with Kyle again. And then if everything went correctly, what will actually happen is that animation will be way down here at the end. As you can see, it took away the root pose. It just uses that root pose to pretty much figure all the global transforms of the skeleton, make sure they match with the humanoid. As you can see there, looks just like it does in Softimage. There's my run animation, already playing in mod view. I'm going to take my new animation, a new humanoid GLA, open up Packscape. I've already made a file, but you'll of course make a new one. I've got my folder structure going on, and I'm not going to overwrite. the existing humanoid, because you never want to override any base assets. Sometimes you screw things up that way. Now, let me just launch this little thing here, and we'll see how it looks in-game. You can see I have the sound turned off because I do not want any kind of odd things to be happening with the speakers and microphone together. Let me just change to a regular. There we go. And there you have it. That was the new animation in the game. All worked as it should. And that animation really only took maybe an hour or two to make at most. But, I mean, if you're new to Softimage, you won't be creating them that quickly. Like I said, you're still really going to have to get used to the program and how a lot of the basic controls and layout of everything before you'll really be making new animations yourselves. But hopefully with this, rather than using something like Dragon, which can take a lot longer, because I once used that program myself, that this can definitely help out to make very fluid animations a lot quicker. So hopefully we'll see a lot more animations coming into Jedi Academy.